My name is Renee Reek, and I'm the Director of Special Education and Dyslexia for HEB ISD. Today, we'll be learning about the special education referral process. In previous modules, we have covered all of the various areas incorporated into the MTSS framework: behavior, social emotional learning, and academics. This graphic provides possible resources for each area. Federal regulations requires all public schools to find and evaluate all students suspected of having a disability who have an educational need for specially designed instruction through special education and related services. In addition to the child find requirement, school districts are required to provide a structured response to intervention program. A referral for special education should include data taken over a period of time, showing an educational need for additional support. RTI is not required for a student to be referred to special education. If a student is being referred for academics, he or she should be receiving Tier 2 support through RTI during the referral process. In order for a student to be eligible for special education services, the student must have a documented disability in one of the eligibility categories under IDEA. Data and information gathered during the referral process must show an educational need for specially designed instruction. This data should support a lack of progress in previous interventions over a significant period of time, and the interventions should have been provided with fidelity. Remember that failure on STAR alone does not equal educational need. Also, students can have a disability without needing special education. They can receive accommodations under Section 504. The IST should always consider social and emotional factors as well as academics when looking at a referral for special education. Also, we need to make sure that these issues are not due to recent changes in a student's life, but have happened over a period of time and impact the student educationally. Specially designed instruction means a change in content, methodology, or delivery of instruction to meet the unique needs of a child as a result of the disability. Specially designed instruction is not remediation or teaching multiple levels below grade level. SDI is intended to assist the student with accessing grade level curriculum.
The first step in the referral process is data collection, or RTI interventions, and a suspicion that a child has a disability. Once there is evidence that a student is not responding, an instructional solutions team, or IST, should be convened. The IST should discuss the data and lack of progress and either refer for special education evaluation or return the student to Tier 2 interventions if data does not support a need for specially designed instruction. Once the referral is received by the diagnostician or speech-language pathologist, the parent will be provided with IDEA consent. The timeline starts once the signed consent is received by the evaluator. The timeline for a referral is 45 school days. Once the evaluation is completed, the campus has 30 calendar days to develop a plan for the student if he or she meets eligibility criteria for special education. When a student is referred for special education evaluation, there is information that must be gathered from multiple sources. The counselor is in charge of putting together the referral packet. The counselor will complete the referral information form and include MTSS and RTI data. The teacher will complete the teacher input form, and the counselor will send home family and social history. The nurse completes the vision and hearing form, and then once all of that has been collected, the diagnostician will send the parent procedural safeguards, notice to evaluate, and consent. Communication during the referral process is essential. Counselors should inform teachers when there is an issue, such as a parent refusing to have his or her student referred. Additionally, evaluation staff should inform the referral team when they have received IDEA consent to begin the evaluation process. Sometimes it takes many attempts to obtain consent, and often evaluation staff may need assistance from the campus in obtaining a parent's signature. Unfortunately, we cannot start the referral process without consent from the parent.
Next, we are going to discuss some of the most common eligibilities for special education in the state of Texas. This pie chart shows the 2021 percentages by eligibility groups in HEB-ISD. As you can see, students with specific learning disabilities make up the largest percentages of students receiving special education services, and autism and speech are not far behind. Next, we will discuss the eligibility criteria for the most common eligibility categories. Currently, 30% of the students receiving special education services in HEB have a specific learning disability. A specific learning disability is a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes. Students with a specific learning disability often have average to above average intellectual ability, but they have an imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or complete mathematical calculations. It is important to understand that a learning disability cannot be caused by a lack of age-appropriate instruction in reading and in math, which makes it difficult for students who have just moved to our country and very young students to qualify as students with a specific learning disability. Evaluators look for a pattern of strengths and weaknesses in intellectual functioning as well as academic skills in the following areas: oral expression, listening comprehension, written expression, basic reading skills, reading fluency, reading comprehension, math calculations, and math problem solving. It is important to remember that a student who has weaknesses in all academic areas may not have a pattern of strengths and weaknesses, and therefore may not be eligible as a student with a specific learning disability. Psychological processes is a broad term that incorporates the wide range of thinking skills we use to process and learn information. The 5 psychological areas or cognitive processes that are affected by a learning disability are perception, attention, memory, metacognition, and organization. Students with dyslexia may be served through general education or special education. Dyslexia may be considered a specific learning disability in Texas. Students receiving dyslexia instruction receive small group instruction in the standard protocol for dyslexia instruction. This SPED should be an Orton-Gillingham research-based multi-sensory curriculum. The following are some facts about dyslexia. Dyslexia is hereditary. It runs in families. Reversing letters does not necessarily mean a student has dyslexia. Reversing letters can also be developmental for many students. Dyslexia is found in every language. It's not just found in English. It impacts 15 to 20% of the world's population. 1 in 5 students has dyslexia. Students with dyslexia have average or above average intelligence. They're often creative, and it is the most common learning disability. 21% of the students receiving special education services in HEB have a primary disability of a speech and language disorder. This percentage does not include the number of students receiving speech therapy who also have an additional disability. The area of eligibility for speech are in stuttering, also called fluency, articulation, language, and voice. 19% of the students receiving special education services in HEB have an autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. This number has increased drastically in the past 12 years as we have learned more about identification of this population. Students with autism spectrum disorders range from a student who is nonverbal with cognitive functioning in the intellectual disability range all the way to cognitive functioning in the gifted range. We have students with autism spectrum disorders in every special education program in the district, and every teacher will need to have skills for working with this population. A student with ASD has deficits in social communication and social interactions across multiple settings and contexts. This disability frequently impacts every facet of a person's life, and early intervention is essential. Additionally, students with ASD often have restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior. Interests or activities. Students with ASD may exhibit repetitive motor movements or repetitive vocalizations. They are often rule-bound and adhere to routines. They are frequently inflexible about change and may need warning when there is a change in the school day, such as a fire drill or a sub. Many students with ASD have preferred topics of conversation and an abnormal intensity in a specific area of interest, such as cars, trains, or video games. They frequently have sensory deficits that can be an overreaction or an underreaction to sensory input. The following are facts about autism spectrum disorders from the CDC. 1 in 54 individuals has ASD. Boys are 4 times more likely to have ASD than girls. It's the fastest growing disorder in the United States. ASD often appears before age 3. 44% of individuals with autism spectrum disorders have average to above average intellectual ability. Many of them are nonverbal before the age of 4, but can still learn to talk. In my experience, I've seen students who haven't started to talk at school until 5th or 6th grade. I've seen a few that started talking in junior high, and I can think of one individual who didn't start talking until high school. There is no cure, but early intervention improves outcomes and is a good reminder individuals with ASD have strong visual memory and learn best with pictures or videos. 13% of the students receiving special education services are eligible under Other Health Impairment, or OHI. The majority of the students under OHI have an attention deficit disorder. In order to qualify under OHI, the ARD committee must have an eligibility statement signed by a physician. However, a physician's diagnosis is not all that is required for a student to receive special education services. The student must still have an educational need for specially designed instruction that has been documented through data collection. 8% of the students receiving special education services in HEB have an intellectual disability. A student who has an intellectual disability must have an IQ score that falls at least 2 standard deviations below the mean, which is typically a 70 on most intellectual measures. The student must also have deficits in 2 areas of adaptive behavior, which include self-care, home living, social skills, use of community resources, self-direction, functional academic skills, work, leisure, health, and safety. 5% of the students receiving special education services in HEB have an emotional disturbance, or ED. An emotional disturbance means a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to a degree that adversely affects the student's educational performance. An inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors, an inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers, inappropriate types of behaviors or feelings under normal circumstances, a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression, or a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. The challenge with an emotional disturbance eligibility is that these characteristics are present in many students at various times in development. In order to be eligible in this category, a student must exhibit the behavior over a long period of time, which could be 6 months or a year depending on the situation. The behavior must also impact the student educationally, so if the behaviors are exhibited primarily at home, the student may not be eligible under this category. Students who are socially maladjusted and may be prone to challenging behavior and criminal activity do not necessarily meet the definition of emotional disturbance. Also, there are many students who go unidentified because they internalize their emotional difficulties, which may explain why boys are identified more often than girls. If you're familiar with the movie Breakfast Club, let's take 2 of the characters as examples. Judd Nelson's character, who's Bender, is a good example of a student who's socially maladjusted. This doesn't necessarily mean that he wouldn't have an emotional disturbance, but a psychologist would have to look beneath the behaviors and the social maladjustment to see what emotionality is at play to make him behave the way he does. whereas Ali Sheedy's character, Allison, is a good example of someone who internalizes their depression and might go unnoticed and might go unidentified in an educational setting. There are many people in the district and on your campus who can assist you with a struggling student. Sometimes recommending strategies is all that is needed, but sometimes you need help putting a plan in place to assist a student. Remember, it will take time to see change, especially when behavior is involved. Here are some of the statistics on the effectiveness of using visuals in instruction. While many learning modalities should be included in instruction daily, there is no denying the power of visuals. Notice 65% of people prefer learning visually. That's over half of your class. So just adding a picture or a video clip to your lesson can mean so much to those students who have difficulties learning. The remainder of this presentation will be some resources that your principal can provide you in a handout format. Many of these resources have effective tools for students with behavior challenges of any age. The biggest request our department receives for training is in the area of autism. TEA has several video trainings for educators that have been very popular in years past. Several of the videos are for general education teachers who are working with students who have high-functioning autism spectrum disorders. They have recently expanded their options, and there are several trainings that I think you would find beneficial. If you would like additional resources, talk to your lead special education teacher. He or she can often provide you with resources, or they know who to ask for assistance. In closing, I hope you have learned something from the MTSS modules that will assist you in your classroom. Our goal in the Special Education and Dyslexia Department is to provide tools for teachers to assist all students who struggle find success. Thank you for your time and all that you do to help students be successful.